I think it's perfectly clear that there was death and disease and suffering of all sorts and destructiveness in nature far, far before there were any hominids, any human beings on the planet. So I cannot see the fall as being a single disastrous ancestral event which totally changed the nature of nature. But what I think happened was this. At some stage in the development of hominid life, our ancestors acquired the amazing human power of being self-conscious, not just conscious of the present, but able to project our thought into the future, amongst other things, to foresee that we are going to die sometime in the future. I don't think even the highest animals do that. The chimp can figure out, throw out the stick, maybe the banana falls down, but he doesn't sit there thinking in 10 years' time, I'm going to be dead. But human beings do. So self-consciousness dawns, and I think it's very likely at the same time that self-consciousness dawned, a new form of God consciousness dawned. I think human beings are conscious of the presence of God, or can be, in a way that animals are not. And what happened, I don't think it was just a single event, but it was a process of which we're now all the heirs, was that our ancestors turned away from God and into themselves. They became curved in upon themselves, as Luther said about human beings. And I think that was the fall. And it didn't bring death into the world in the biological sense, but it brought into the world what you might call mortality, which is human sadness at the transience and decay of the world in which we live. Because we were self-conscious, we knew we were going to die. Because we'd alienated ourselves from God, who, in my view, is the only ground, but the sufficient ground, of the hope of a destiny beyond death. Our ancestors were caught up in that sort of sadness. And that's what I think the meaning of saying the fall brought death into the world is not biological death, but this human recognition of mortality. And I think if you study Romans 5, I think that does the work that Paul needs it to do when he says, through one man, death came into the world. I see the Adam and Eve story, a very powerful story of Genesis 3, as a profound myth. Now, myth doesn't mean a fairy story. It means truth too deep to be conveyed except through story. And I don't think that the power of the Adam and Eve story depends upon there being two identifiable, doesn't depend upon there being two identifiable people whose names were Adam and Eve. It is a symbol for humanity. It's concerned not only with the human past, but also our experience in the human present. Because in that powerful story, what the serpent whispers in Eve's ear is, eat this fruit and you won't need God. You can do without God after this. That's the root character of sin. Sin is the refusal of creatures to accept that they are creatures, the desire to do it their way, to go it alone. And I think that's a very powerful diagnosis of the human situation throughout recorded history and in our present experience today.